Good evening. My name is Kevin Ellis, and I work at the John J. Pershing VA Medical Center. I am the current union president, and I am a whistleblower as defined by 38 USC 328 small g small 2. I am a whistleblower at the facility, and I have been a recipient of employment discrimination at the same facility. The list of names that you see beside you here are a list of employees or high ranking managers or officials within Vision 15. Within the VA, we call it Vision. To someone that doesn't work for the VA or the federal government, it will be known as a regional office. These are the employees or the high ranking managers who have engaged in whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination. On my left is a list of names that you see: William Patterson, Patrick Shea, Robert Ritter, and Daniel Carr. William Patterson was the Vision 15 director who recently retired within the past couple of months. Prior to William Patterson being the Vision 15 director, we had very few, if any, issues within Vision 15 that you could speak of or our local agency. But for some reason, William Patterson has a retaliatory spirit, one who doesn't mind getting involved in retaliation and employment discrimination. People that worked for him followed his leadership, followed his direction. That next one would have been Patrick Shea. Who is Patrick Shea? Patrick Shea is the Vision 15 Human Resources Officer. He's in charge of all of the human resource employees throughout Vision 15 or the region. He took an integral part also in participating in whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination. The next gentleman on the list is a guy by the name of Robert Ritter. Robert Ritter is or was the associate director at the Columbia VA Medical Center. Now, the reason why this is important is Robert Ritter is the agency official that actually made the proposal to terminate my employment. However, Robert Ritter and I have never met each other. We don't know who each other are. That I can recall, I've heard him make the comment that he didn't know who I was either. So the question before us is, how did Robert Ritter become a high-ranking agency official, an associate director, to propose a termination against an employee who didn't even know? I'm going to lead you through the connection. Robert Ritter worked for William Patterson. Robert Ritter and William Patterson were co-workers. They knew each other. They communicated on a regular basis. He was the high-ranking official that proposed my termination. Within that proposal to terminate my employment were a few, not just one, but a few of my protected disclosures. In the federal government, you are not allowed as an agency official to take a protected disclosure. That is why it's called protected. That means you can't take action against an employee because they make the protected disclosure. They did it anyway. That violates federal law. But as I'm saying this to you, this is a pattern of misconduct and behavior by these Vision 15 employees. Daniel Carr was the Vision 15 Human Resources Employee Labor Relations Specialist. He connected and received all the information from all the managers and employees that were targeting my employment. He was a central piece in putting it all together, and he agreed to it. He testified and said that was his role, was to collect it all. He collected it all, gave it to William Patterson. William Patterson then in turn gave it to Robert Ritter. Robert Ritter proposed the termination. It was an illegal termination proposal. Should have never happened. But here's the reason why that conduct kept going. During the past White House administration, there was absolutely no accountability. No accountability. Vision 15 employees and managers were giving a green light to do whatever they wanted to do, however they wanted to do it, and to whoever they wanted to do it to. No one was holding them accountable. So from the regional office, there is always a connection to your local facilities. What I'm going to show you next is a list of names of employees from the local facility that also engaged in whistleblower retaliation. The top name, Patricia Hall. Patricia Hall was the medical center director at my local facility. This lady is very interesting, and here's the reason why. She was the first employee or the first high-ranking manager that I know of within my hospital, and I've been there 20 years, that was found guilty of whistleblower retaliation. And she was suspended and disciplined for whistleblower retaliation. After about a year and a half or 2-year-long investigation, she was suspended for 15 days because she targeted a whistleblower. Well, here's how it connected to me. In early 2016 into late 2016, early 2017, I was the representative for that whistleblower. That whistleblower was Dr. Dale Klein. As many of you might remember, we made headline news from Poplar Bluff, Missouri because of Patricia Hall's action. She is the central key factor in all of this. As a result of her actions, she caused 2 additional managers to be suspended. Their names are not on here, but they was Dr. Krishnan and Corey Jensen, both from the local facility, who were suspended following her direction. When she left our hospital, she didn't leave the VA. She went right down the street to the Columbia VA Medical Center, where she was the boss or the supervisor over, guess who? Robert Ritter. She was still the the subordinate of the division director, William Patterson. So these 3 people stayed in connection and worked together since about 2016. There is your common thread. When a medical center director and your vision director are all engaged and working together and committing whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination, what signal does that give to all the managers that work underneath them? I can tell you what it gives them. It gives them a green light to do the same thing that I'm doing because I got your back. I got you covered. That is the type of behavior that they were involved in. The next person on the list, Libby Johnson. Libby Johnson was the associate director at the local facility underneath Patricia Hall. She was part of the whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination that occurred at the local facility. She was an integral part of it and participated in it. Behind Libby Johnson is a lady by the name of Kimberly Atkins. Kimberly Atkins became the associate director after Libby Johnson. She arrived at the hospital in February of 2021 and kept that spirit of whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination going. Why? Because she worked for William Patterson. William Patterson appoints medical center directors and your associate directors within Vision 15. They all work together. Now the next 2 people, Joshua Holland and Denise Smith, are both human resources employees, or they were. I know Denise Smith recently retired, but Joshua Holland still works for the Department of Veteran Affairs. He works in the VA Central Office location, somewhere in Washington, D.C., either in person or virtually. Now, the common thread between Joshua Holland and Denise Smith is once again Patricia Hall. Patricia Hall is a cancer within this facility, and she is a cancer within the division. Not only did Patricia Hall get the previous employees disciplined for helping her commit whistleblower retaliation, now she's drug in Joshua Holland, who willingly participated. We have all of his documents, and Denise Smith, who willingly participated, and we have her documents as well. These employees all work together to commit employment discrimination and whistleblower retaliation. The next person on the list is Lisa Edwards. Lisa Edwards is a very interesting character here. Lisa Edwards is a privacy officer. She should have the most respect out of anybody that works in that hospital when it comes to protecting privacy. And she does not do that as she is required, or at least when it comes to me. Now, I say that like this because she admitted in federal arbitration that she found me guilty of a Privacy Act violation, and she conducted no investigation at all. She admitted that. She was so upset that my attorney asked her, how could you find Mr. Ellis, me, guilty of a privacy violation when you conducted no investigation? She broke out in tears. She's crying, she's sobbing because she's just been caught in a lie. She's just been exposed for what she did. But she turned and looked across the table and said, because HR told me to find him guilty. Guess who was sitting across the table who Lisa Edwards looked at directly? The name just above hers, Denise Smith. When Lisa Edwards looked at Denise Smith, she dropped her head. And Denise was trying to get so mouthy during the arbitration that the arbitrator looked over at her and told her to be quiet because they had just both been exposed in committing a lie. Them two high-ranking agency officials. Now, how can you have a privacy officer at the local facility or any other facility engage in that type of misconduct and you as lower-ranking officials take them serious? You can't do it. The next person on the list is Shanitra Jones, another ERLR individual that works for, guess who? Patrick Shea and William Patterson. They carry the division's water and the agency's water when they engage in whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination. And I'm going to tell you how and why that happens in just a moment. But these people engaged in whistleblower retaliation. The next name on the list, Dale Garrett. Now, this is a very interesting character. Dale Garrett is my current supervisor. But before he was my supervisor, he was the chief of the police department at the local facility. And while he was the chief of police, he also engaged in employment discrimination in connection with Patricia Hall, Libby Johnson, Denise Smith, and Lisa Edwards. Matter of fact, it was so bad. It was so bad that another police chief, when they came, said they were not going to engage in the type of behavior that Mr. Garrett had engaged in, and using the VA police as a battering ram against Mr. Kevin Ellis, which was me. Mr. Garrett is also interesting from another perspective. He is the individual that said within the facility that he couldn't wait to walk and listen to this term, he could not wait to walk my black ass out the building. This is coming from a chief of the VA police at the John J. Pershing VA Medical Center when he was the chief. Now imagine, now he's now my supervisor. He's got the same mentality. He's got the same thought process. None of that changed. These people engaged in whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination. Now, one of the things you may ask is, well, how do you know they participated in whistleblower retaliation? How did they know you turned them in? Here is how I know. The best thing you can do to help protect yourself is always send an email to the individuals that you turn in for their misconduct. Dale Garrett received emails from me telling him that I turned him in for his misconduct. Shanitra Jones, Lisa Edwards, Denise Smith, Joshua Holland, Kimberly Atkins, Libby Johnson, Patricia Hall, and yes, William Patterson, and Daniel Carr. They were all notified through government email that they had been turned in for their misconduct. But yet, they still took some of those protected disclosures where we turned them in and used them in employment discrimination. Not only was I targeted as a whistleblower, I had my civil rights violated. You have no idea how much of my paycheck has been withheld since 2018 because of their behavior. It's really, really amazing they've been able to get away with it and no one was held accountable. But the list goes on. We're not done. Also participating in this behavior was a couple of general counsel employees, attorneys. They've engaged in some of the same misconduct. The young man's name at the top, Dane Roper, we have him in transcript, clearly lying about documents that he had in his possession. He was hiding. He lied about the creation of the documents. He lied about who typed the documents. He lied about who had the documents in their possession. We've got him on transcript telling those lies. Now, how can you, as a Department of Veteran Affairs, have attorneys that should be representing the VA that is committing this type of behavior? It makes it very, very, very difficult to trust anything they say with any credibility. The young lady underneath him, Erin Milligan, also an attorney from their office, same location. She took my name, my full date of birth, and my full social security number and exposed it to people who did not have a need to know. That's where Lisa Edwards came in. And this is the part where I said there was some disparate treatment because of my race. Lisa Edwards, when my full name was disclosed, my full social security number, and my full date of birth to people who didn't have a need to know, said, oh, it's not a violation. It's no big deal. However, here was the rub. When she thought that I committed a privacy violation by only mentioning a name because I couldn't pronounce the last name, didn't mention the date of birth because I didn't know, didn't mention a social security number because I didn't know, that's the individual that Lisa Edwards says I committed a privacy violation against, and she never conducted an investigation. Now, that employee was Caucasian. She was white, but I was black. No personal information disclosed at all. No full name, no full social security number, no full date of birth. Mine was splattered all over the state of Missouri, from Kansas City to St. Louis, Missouri, just all over the place, up and down I-70, being shuffled back and forth through email, through hand copies, through papers, all over the place. That was not a privacy violation. Lisa Edwards even mailed some information, according to her, to my home address, went to the wrong address. I found the envelope down the street one day just walking, just loose papers. Had my full name, my full date of birth, and my full social security number in it. Once again, Lisa Edwards says that was not a privacy violation. Now you kind of getting the picture here? Now you getting the picture? They're white, I'm black. They expose all of my information. It is not a privacy violation. They assume, which was proven to be not true, that I committed a privacy violation, but yet I was found guilty without an investigation. If that is not the definition of corruption and misconduct and misbehavior, what is? Now, these employees for the agency in Vision 15, guess what? They didn't work by themselves. They had some help. Now, these are really some interesting characters. The first name on the paper is Ryan Wells, executive assistant to the medical center director and associate director. Ryan is an interesting character. He's testified before two arbitrators, and they've all said his testimony lacked any credibility. However, here's what he did to me. He put in email through Outlook system and called me, now listen to this closely, a GIMP golden retriever that licks his nuts. Let me say it again. Ryan Wells called me a GIMP golden retriever that licks his nuts. He's Caucasian. Never did anything to him. Didn't issue him a 15-day suspension. Didn't issue him a 30-day suspension. Nothing. Why? Because he worked with William Patterson. He was an assistant to the medical center director, Patricia Hall, and all these high-ranking officials. He was a part of that group that targeted employees' workplace. He's also the same one that went down and threatened Tracy U. Daly, who was also a whistleblower, and told her that if she didn't keep her mouth shut, that he has friends and his wife works in high places. But they get away with this because there's no accountability. The next two people on the list are just ordinary employees doing unordinary acts of misconduct. Susie Owens, nurse practitioner, and Tony Stoner, who was a licensed practitioner nurse, LPN. Them two employees were working with Patricia Hall, Libby Johnson, Joshua Holland, Denise Smith, William Patterson, Patrick Shea, Daniel Carr. They all worked together. Now, this is important. Everything that I'm telling you right now in this session, I can back it up in hardcore written documentation. Don't never just take my word for what I'm telling you. Ask me to provide you with the proof. And I can do it because we have it. Now, them two people I just mentioned the last, Susie Owens and Tony Stoner, has just been, how do I say this? Banned and kicked out of AFGE Local 2338 for life. Why? Because they attempted a coup, tried to take over the local union with the help of Ryan Wells and the agency, and Vision 15 tried to perform a coup and just take over the union. They also engaged in whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination by lying and making false statements to help the agency get away with, to help them try to get away with terminating my employment. Some of their co-workers told on them and told who it was who was helping them. We have all of that documentation as well. But here's what I want you to really understand. Vision 15 and the John J. Pershing VA Medical Center has a documented history of retaliation. Why? During the previous administration in the White House, there was no accountability. not even from OAWP. That is not our assessment. That was the assessment from the Government Accountability Office, in which Peter O'Rourke was appointed as the director of OAWP. And they found out that there was no accountability in the Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection. Imagine that. From 2016 through the current date, Vision 15 and the John J. Pershing VA Medical Center, which is the third smallest VA in the entire nation, has been the leader in whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination against frontline staff. They were so engulfed in it and so comfortable in committing that behavior that Patricia Hall thought it was funny during a December 22nd, 2017 meeting in which she said that our facility has been known to become Popular Bluff. Not Poplar Bluff, which is the name of the city, but Popular Bluff. And she laughed about it and thought it was funny. But she wasn't laughing the next month when she was serving her 15-day suspension. But during that December 2017 meeting, she thought it was very funny that the facility had been known for their whistleblower retaliation. That's how ingrained and engulfed and shielded these people thought they were. Just shielded from any type of accountability. Now you might be asking, well, what is whistleblower retaliation? Or what is employment discrimination? Whistleblower retaliation and employment discrimination occurs when agency officials, high-ranking agency officials, abuse their authority by issuing illegal or unjust disciplinary actions towards employees for exposing their misconduct. Now, all of the retaliation has only come after employees like myself tried to meet with them and say, hey, look, this is illegal. You can't do this. We need you to change course. However, here's what they have told us. Shut up and go do it the Poplar Bluff way. That's the answer that we normally get from agency officials when we point out to them, you're violating federal law, you're violating federal rules, and you're violating federal regulations. They tell us to shut up and go back to work. And they continue in their course of action. Since 2016, these employees have been retaliated against. Dr. Dale Klein, Sonia Ellis, Richard Yopstel, Scotty White, Kelly Abishan, Carissa Tompkins, Robert Fisher, Jacob Jordan, Harold Lampley, Rick McCoy, Todd Shimkus, and myself, Kevin Ellis. We have all been the recipients of misconduct by the agency, but there's been no accountability. And here's how we figured out what happened. When employees make a complaint, it goes up to OAWP or OSC. We learn they don't conduct the investigations. They send it down to, you got it, William Patterson, Vision 15, who then calls Patricia Hall and her cronies and say, hey, go investigate this. Here's how we found that out. In 2020, they were investigating a bad air quality allegation, which was substantiated. While they were asking Mr. White questions, Miss Ginger Potts from quality management was changing his answers. She was literally in front of him, changing his answers and saying, here's what I heard you say. And we said that is not true. That is not what he said. We learned at that point she was changing the answers, submitting a false report, sent the false report through Vision 15 up to OAWP. And OAWP were closing employees' legitimate, credible allegations. They were closing them. And we learned that's what they were doing. Now that brings me to where we are now. This is relevant because I submitted a complaint against the individuals that was mentioned. These people, I gave you their names. That complaint was submitted to a young man working for OAWP by the name of Ryan Taylor. Now, Ryan Taylor did something that was great. First thing he did was he emailed me back my complaint with all the names in which I made allegations against. That was the right thing to do because it confirmed what the allegations were and who they were against. But for some reason, something changed after I got that email. For some reason, he has refused to follow through with the investigations. He hasn't spoke to me at all, about William Patterson. He hasn't interviewed me about William Patterson. He has not interviewed me about Patrick Shea. He has not interviewed me about Patricia Hall. He has not interviewed me about Robert Ritter. He has not interviewed me about Daniel Carr. He has not interviewed me about Denise Smith, Joshua Holland, Libby Johnson, or Lisa Edwards. And I've sent him probably 20 to 25 emails, him and his supervisor, and they have failed to have a meeting with me. They have yet to provide me the information to show me in transcripts where they interviewed me concerning those high-ranking individuals. Now, we're asking the Secretary of the VA to get involved here and do something about this because OAWP is not an independent agency. They fall under the umbrella of the Department of Veteran Affairs. Now, this is important because there was a history of misconduct happening at our hospital right under Patricia Hall and Robert Ritter's noses. Some of the things that was happening was one employee by the name of Ashley had been called a nigger by another employee by the name of Olga. Someone had put up in the elevators at our hospital, don't elect blacks to office. Or having your executive assistant to the director say to me, hey, Kevin's a gimp golden retriever that licks his nuts. Or Dale Garrett saying, I can't wait to walk his black ass out the building. This is the type of behavior that was allowed to continue and be festered and grow right within the facility. And employees knew they can get away with it. And they've done it. They've got away with it up to now. We're not going to stop until we hold these people accountable. Not because we say so, but because the law says so. Now, I'm finishing up. Everything that I've said to you here right now today can be backed up in email, can be backed up in written form, reports. We have all the information if you want it. And I'm easy to find, and I'm easy to reach. If you want to talk to me, you can reach out to me at the John J. Pershing VA Medical Center as a federal employee. I'm not hard to find. I represent a lot of people. Now, you may ask, why have they come so hard after me? Well, here's the problem. I held them accountable, and they've had to pay out millions of dollars in restitution, in penalties, and fines for a number of workplace violations: safety, employment discrimination, whistleblower retaliation. Rather than them correct their behavior or their misconduct, they're under the concept that they can fire or terminate anybody who turns them in, which allows them to continue their misconduct. And we're calling on the Secretary of the VA, Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection, and the Office of Special Counsel to stop this behavior. If we, as federal employees and frontline staff, cannot trust these governmental offices to do thorough and correct investigations and hold these agency officials accountable, what faith are we supposed to have in any of you? Any of you. What faith would we have in you? We're asking you, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Madonna, we're asking the Government Accountability Office to get involved. We're asking you to get involved and stop this madness and stop this behavior. Thank you, and have a good evening.